one of the big questions that I have, and let's just go. We'll go to Mark Robinson, who's been a guest. He says, doesn't the SBR cap need to increase to at least 5 million to be workable? Now, before we come to that, we'll go to see what Shabnam had to say. Shabnam Amabiaji says, isn't a debt level of 5 million better placed into a traditional voluntary administration? Whilst 1 million may be low, there would be too many complexities to warrant a small business restructuring and the lower fees at a debt level of 5 million. And then we've had someone else buy into this as well. Alice Rue, I don't know Alice, I don't know if any of you know Alice, but she says, I tend to agree. I thought the 1 million in unsecured debt only about right in terms of where the SBR should be aimed at. So thank you very much to Mark, Alice and Shabnam for sharing your thoughts there. Now, another comment that I don't have is a comment that someone made when we posted the promotion for this, and he said, the fees are too expensive. Now, of course, the whole SBR thing is meant to reduce the fee. So let's start with you, Kathy. Where are you on the limit? Should we lift the limit to 5 million?
I'm probably with all three of the comments. Do I think it's effective at 1 mil? Probably not, because I think it's a good intention. Let me start at the beginning and say I think that it is well intentioned to have a smaller process and a streamlined processes to help businesses of this size try and restructure themselves. So that's helpful, because VA can be an expensive process. It can be complex. And if you're a business with sort of sub-1 million debt, maybe it doesn't quite work for you. So I think there's valid intention. Do I think that the current process as drafted achieves that? Probably not, which is why I think we haven't seen big numbers. And I think it's a range of reasons. I think the limit's one part of it. But I also think the process doesn't quite hang in my head. It's been referred to as a debtor in possession model, in that the debtor stays in control of the business effectively.
Yeah.
So you're coming in as a small business restructuring practitioner. You don't really have access to challenge or interrogate. You know, they give you books and records, you look at them. You're being asked to certify a plan, but you may not have the appropriate information or control to actually form a view on that. You're not really having to compare it to an alternative, because there's no need to do a liquidation counterfactual. So I'm not quite sure what you're certifying, other than mathematically it adds up and you're sending it out to creditors. As to Shabnam's point, as you get up, as you lift it to 5 mil, they become quite complex, even though the debt might be small. Often at the smaller end, the actual structures that are in place and the issues that come to play and related party involvement, that's quite complex at that part, at the smaller end of town. So again, I don't know that this system works, where you're being asked to come in and solve the problem and you've got some liability as a practitioner, but you've got no control. And meanwhile, I'm still not sure how the business trades through when they're effectively flagging at the beginning of this process to all their creditors, sorry, we might be insolvent, so if you can just help us out here and take a haircut. Oh, but can you keep trading with us? Because we'd really like to trade through this period. Because if I'm the creditor or supplier, even with the best intentions in the world, if I say, look, I might take a haircut on my debt, I want COD on anything between us whilst you affect this plan. So it squeezes you anyway.
Yeah. I mean, what now, Michael? What are your thoughts there? Firstly, I understand that you may have been somewhere hovering around at the conception of this model, although it may or may not have turned into Frankenstein's monster once it got into government hands. And I know, talking to you the other day, you thought that the cap was one issue, but employee entitlements as a qualifier is another. So, I mean, firstly, any reflections on Kathy's comments, and do you want to sort of talk to us about employee entitlements?
Yeah. Look, the $1 million cap is, I think, intended to be given some time to see how it works. And I think that time should play out. Yes, and it was good to see Paula Parthy there as well. Paul and I and Richard Fisher and others were speaking to Treasury almost around about this time a year ago, trying to triage, and we we basically suggested that there should be the reform should be aimed at the smaller end of town to enable debt restructuring effectively. What came out, what we put forward was relatively straightforward. What came out is quite complicated, but I think that it should be given a go. I think that there are issues, the general populace doesn't really know about it, so that, there's a bit of education. The point about employee entitlements is a much larger issue, but, and this is a personal view, I think that the primacy given to entitlements, potentially over jobs, pervades not just this, but voluntary administration as well, and impacts on safe harbour. But to get, unfortunately, any serious consideration of that is just not going to fly politically. But from a law reform, restructuring perspective, looking internationally, I wonder whether enabling people to compromise entitlements to save jobs may assist in restructuring across the board. But that's a big topic, and it's undoubtedly controversial. But to go to the point, I think give it another few months before we look at the cap on the 1 million, and the theory behind it was about 78% of businesses that go into some form of insolvency process have debts of less than $1 million. That was the reason why they chose that cap, but it should be reviewed in due course.